Today I'm pulling more parts out of the parts car. I'm going to try to remove the dashboard out of the car just to have it as a spare for my 2004 Maxima. So first I tried to pull the center console out, but because of the Florida sun, this thing just crumbled apart in my hands. And they don't make cars like they used to. So once I had that taken out, I tried to salvage as much of it as possible and started working on getting the radio out. The navigation and radio all come out in one piece, so that's super convenient. I don't have to sit there and try to figure out how to get each one out one by one. Next, I try to figure out where the bolts are on the dash. So I started removing the trim pieces around the top. I used a plastic pry tool because I don't want to scratch up anything. It's super convenient when you're working on interiors of your cars and things like that you don't want to dig up with metal pry tools. So I started on the passenger side and started working my way around. The passenger side is just held in by clips, and then when you get up towards the security light, that comes out and there's actually a bolt behind it, or a screw that's held in with. And then I started working on the driver's side and taking that panel off. Next, I had to remove the plastic trim pieces around the steering column, and this model Maxima has the electronic tilt steering wheel. The electronic switch that normally adjusts the steering wheel is actually not working, so I had to try to figure out how I was going to move the steering wheel to get the trim panels off of the steering column. There's actually a bolt on the side of the mechanism for the steering column that allows you to adjust it. So once it's removed, I was able to slide up the column and actually remove the trim pieces. Once I had that out, I decided to find the two main bolts that actually held the dash in, and they're actually under the solar sensors that are on the dash. So once you have those out, there's two bolts back there. I believe they're either 10 or 12 millimeters, and once those are out, you'll be able to actually slide the dash out as long as you have everything else or all the screws removed from the dash that are holding it in place. And then I started working on the steering wheel. You remove the airbag by removing the two 10mm bolts that are on the side, and then there's a center nut that holds the actual steering wheel in. And once you have that off, you'll be able to, if you don't have a steering wheel puller, I usually just hammer away at the steering wheel until it comes loose, and then I take it off that way. When working with the airbag, one thing to remember is to always disconnect the battery, because the last thing you want is for that thing to punch you in the face. For the most part, everything's coming out pretty easy. But as you saw in the beginning, some of the trim pieces, they just fell apart in my hand. I think that's just due to automotive makers just making things cheaper. When I compare it to like the GS300 that I have, which is a 95, the quality is way better. Or even on the Maxima that I had before, a 95 Maxima, I never experienced that before, where the center console would just crumble in your hands. And that's it, the dash is out. Now for the dash itself, there's approximately, I would say, 15 to 20 screws, little nuts and bolts that you got to take out, but it's pretty straightforward. So what I did is, since I'm using it as a parts dash, or I probably plan on wrapping this dash or doing something custom with it, so I marked the locations with a wax marker, so I know when I'm pulling the dash that's in my car currently, I'll have an idea of where everything should be.